picture in picture. Huh. Never even noticed that there. Let's see. Can y'all hear me good?
Starting off in our number 10 spot.
Alright. I didn't really feel like gaming or anything today, so I'm just reacting to this stuff. I always enjoy these, and they drop a ton of them just today, so I went through and selected them. Well, what is today? I don't know. I just saw a bunch of notifications from them.
Spot, we have Tea Time. This story comes from someone who has a very strange memory from when they were around 9 years old. They were eating dinner in their room for some reason that they can't quite remember. What they do remember, however, is being sat at their dresser, which had a big mirror. While sitting there, the storyteller's dad came in to check on them and asked if they wanted more tea, to which they replied yes. They picked up their empty teacup and handed it to him and watched as he walked out the door. In the next instant, they looked back over and saw their same teacup, completely full of tea, right where they had just picked up the one that was empty. They of course asked their dad about this after, because what in the world is going on, and their dad said that he never came into their room at all. This story is bizarre for sure, but there's also something really eerie about it as well. I can totally see why this was one that really stuck with them. In our number 9 spot today, we have the hotel room. This story starts out with a storyteller explaining that this strange story happened when they were on a family road trip. They write, quote, "We stayed at a hotel for a night. Our room was nothing more than 2 beds and a restroom with a big mirror across from the beds. Everyone went to sleep but me. I stayed up playing a mobile game I was addicted to at the time. At about 2 a.m. I went to sleep. When I woke up, I noticed something was just ever so slightly off. The mirror was gone, the room had 2 separate bedrooms, and there were 3 beds. Apparently I was the only one who noticed it because my family called me crazy. Still confused to this day as to what happened." It's the small changes like this that would have me absolutely freaking out, because it seems small, but you know something is off and different. I don't blame them for still remembering this day and questioning what exactly happened here. In our number 8 spot today, we have a new phone. Okay. This one wouldn't be the weirdest one in the world, but it has to do with the lost phone, and I just can't get over how strange the place they found it was. So they write, quote, "My friend and I were talking to our roommate and her girlfriend one night. Roommate had just received her new phone and was sitting in bed using it while the 4 of us chatted. So roommate sat her phone down while we were all still chatting. She goes to pick it back up and it's gone. Like, she had just put it down for a few minutes tops before she noticed that the thing had poofed. I call it for her and we can't hear it. We take the comforter and the sheets off the bed, shake them all out. We look under the bed, behind it, everywhere we can. That phone is gone. Even though we hadn't left her room at all during our conversation when the phone disappeared. We tore apart the whole apartment trying to find it. Finally, we decided to try her car. It was locked in the trunk. We live on the 3rd floor and we were all in the same room watching her use it before it somehow teleported." There's something about finding anything in a locked trunk that seems kind of eerie and creepy, and couple this with how the whole thing is seemingly impossible.
What kind of drugs were y'all on? First off, who locks their phone in the trunk? I could understand in the car, but the trunk? Like, what? Anyways.
And you've got a lot of unanswered questions here. In our number 7 spot today, we have a server's nightmare. This story starts out with someone explaining that it comes from a time many years ago when they worked as a server at a restaurant. The memory begins with the quintessential server panic experience, where their coworker forgot to punch in the food order for a 3-top. If you work in the service industry, you know the absolute panic that sets in, especially if you're like me and never write things down. You can't go back and ask these people what they had when their food should already be out and on the table. It's a panic like none other. Anyway, so this coworker not only forgot to punch in the food, but also of course forgot what the order was. This storyteller was laughing at their stressed coworker, who was obviously trying to figure out what to do, and while laughing at him, the storyteller threw out a random order at them. They said, quote, "It was probably fried mozzarella, a cheeseburger with no onions, and chicken fingers." While the storyteller was joking and just having fun,
That
it
sounds
turns out
pretty
that
good.
somehow this was the exact order that the table had ordered and the person needed. It totally freaked the storyteller out, and they even made their coworker let them run the food to the table to make sure that he wasn't making it up. Turns out the storyteller was right and probably saved their coworker a lot of stress and hassle. In our number 6 spot today, we have the camp photo. This story comes from someone who has always remembered this strange thing that happened years ago when they were 12 years old and at camp. They explained that they were taking a photo on a disposable camera because cell phones were still in the flip phone phase, and considering the fact that they were 12, even if they weren't, it's not like they had a cell phone anyway. So, with this disposable camera, they were taking a picture of 2 of their friends that they had made while at camp. This is all fine and well, of course, and honestly very cute, but it's what's seen in the photo that really has stuck with this person. They explained that in the photo, one of the friends appears twice in 2 entirely different poses. They explain that it still weirds them out every time they come across it. In our number 5 spot today, we have Employee of the Month.
Let
This
us see
story
the
comes from
photo.
someone who almost had a premonition of sorts. They explain, quote, "I was sitting in my office one day when my desk phone rang, and it is my undersheriff asking me to bring him all of the reports, dispatch logs, any documentation reference to a specific case, so I get it all together and start towards his office. I meet him in the hallway and hand him the paperwork. He asked me what it was. I told him it's the blank documentation you asked for. He then swears he never asked me for it, that he had just arrived and had not called my office. He was on his way down the hall to ask me to get it together." I mean, at the very least, I hope he gave this person a raise, because while this certainly was a weird experience, that's also the most efficient employee I've ever heard of. I hope that's not the new work standard, though. Like, what do you mean you didn't anticipate my needs? In our number 4 spot today, we have The Repeater. This story is one that only lasted for about an hour, but it definitely was a strange and confusing hour for the person who experienced it. Basically, it started when they were watching TV with friends, and they ended up landing on some sort of old 80s movie that they used to watch many years prior, but hadn't seen in quite some time. All of the dialogue from the movie came flooding back to them, and they remembered what each character was going to say next. Not so weird, our brains work in mysterious ways. This, however, seemed to open some sort of gate, because when they changed channels and were trying to find something new to watch, this person was now able to recite every line of dialogue prior to it being said, as if they had memorized it all, but this time it was with shows they had never seen before in their life. This then translated into them being able to predict what their friends were about to say right before them saying it. Again, this strange effect only lasted for about an hour before things returned to normal, but what a strange hour that would have been. In our number 3 spot today, we have The Inside
What a
Scoop.
cool
Maybe
hour
this is
that
a
would have
parallel
been.
universe story,
I've been
or maybe
messing
this
with people.
person is just a bit of a clairvoyant or something of that nature, but whatever you want to call it, this story is definitely a weird one. They write, quote, "Sometimes I'll be talking to someone I've never met, and very specific facts about them will pop into my consciousness out of nowhere, like this person had a golden retriever that died in 2009. Then they'll inevitably bring up the fact that I mentioned without me saying anything first, sometimes seconds later, sometimes years. This would be so strange and also so hard to navigate. You'd have all these things you seemingly happen to know about this person, and now you have to avoid bringing them up until they do. It's like knowing someone's secret. That would be really weird. If you had this sort of ability, would you tell people or would you keep it to yourself?" In our number 2 spot today, we have The Wake Up Call. This story comes from someone who is explaining a very scary
I'd keep
moment
it to
that their
myself
brother
and use it.
experienced that is kind of unexplainable. They start off by saying that it doesn't seem as though their mom believes this story, but they definitely do. Most of that is because they saw their brother after this incident and could definitely tell that something had seriously spooked him. They write, quote, "He was sitting in the passenger seat driving home alongside my mom. A bright green car swerved and hit them, knocking bits and pieces of glass into his arm. He jolted awake afterwards, just in time to see the green car pass them. He claimed he felt the marks the glass left afterwards too." So basically, this guy might have somehow been in a reality where this accident really did happen, and then was able to jump realities to one with a better outcome. Or perhaps he was just temporarily transported to the other
He's
one
lucky he
before
didn't
jumping
jump the
back
one
into
with the
this
worst
one.
outcome.
The possibilities really really are endless when it comes to the multiverse, and I can totally understand how an experience like this would have somebody pretty shaken up. Whatever really happened here, I'm just glad that this person somehow ended up in the timeline where everything is a-okay. In our number 1 spot today, we have the boiler repairs.
What about the one
This
that took
story
his
is a
place?
bit of a longer one, but it's so strange and truly like nothing I've ever heard before. It absolutely shocked me. This person wrote, quote, "This didn't happen to me, but to my dad. He works for a heating and air conditioning company, so he often has to go out to people's houses to fix things. About 5 years ago, he told me he had a bizarre dream where he went on a call to an elderly woman's house. He'd never seen the house or this woman before, but he said it was bizarre because of how realistic the whole thing felt. He fixed her boiler in the dream, chatted for a bit, and then left. About a week later, his company gets a call from an elderly woman needing her boiler fixed. They sent my dad on the job. When he arrived, he said it was the exact same house from his dream and the same old lady. He knew her name before he even had to ask and knew his way around the
Epiphany.
house without having gone inside yet. When she opened the door, she said, 'Hi, Gary,' and when he asked how she already knew his name, she said she had a dream last week that her boiler broke and that my dad is the one who came to fix it, so she just knew that would be his name. Two complete strangers never having met each other had the exact same dream that they would meet each other, and they did. The whole thing is so crazy.
What?
That would be so strange, but also so cool. It's almost like they were destined to meet each other in some way. Honestly, the unexplainable can be terrifying, but it can also be kind of nice and cool and truly mystifying. All I want to know now is if Gary and the elderly woman kept in touch.
Starting off this countdown, we
Yeah.
have the deck of cards. Now, I don't know about you, but normal deck of cards don't have number 1 cards. In replace, they have aces. But would you look at that? This odd deck had 1s, which makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know about you, but I've never seen this before. If we're playing Go Fish
Didn't
and
realize
you
this
whip
was a
out a
30
1,
minute.
I'm leaving. I'm sorry. Jokes aside, we have decks with aces because they can serve as the highest card or lowest. So it can serve as a 1 or more than 1. That's why we don't have 1s, according to Google. Don't quote me. So I don't know where this person got
No,
their
you
cards
can only
from,
get
but it just
one
seems
through your
wrong.
headset at
In our
a
9th
time.
spot
Now,
today, we have the knockoffs.
you
Sometimes
can-
brand name pieces can be
You can, if your computer can handle it, send them out to different sources, like headphones, studio monitors or speakers or whatever you've got, and then your computer speakers. As far as playing 2 different audios at the same time, I don't know. I think I found a setting in my computer that'll allow me to do that. I'll look into that after this and get back with you on it. Because I think you can do that. But whether or not your computer can handle it is a different story.
expensive, and we want the same or similar item but cheaper. That's where knockoff brands come into play. Take a look at these cereals. They're so similar, yet so different. So we got Cocoa Rice instead of Cocoa Puffs. We got Honey Nut Crispy Oats instead of Honey Nut Cheerios. Fruit Rounds instead of Fruit Loops. Marshmallows and Stars instead of Lucky Charms.
Marshmallows
Cookies instead
and
of Cookie
Stars.
Crisp. And lastly, Kids Crunch instead of Captain Crunch. Now, if I saw an aisle filled with those,
Ooh, I want those
I think I was
cookies
transported
that,
to another universe. In our 8th spot today, we have the map. Now let's get to a
Hold up,
serious
what did
one.
she say
And
the
to
name was?
another
'Cause I'm
universe.
gonna-
Now, if I and lastly, Kids instead of Lucky Charms, Cookies instead of Cookie Crisp, and
Cookie Crisp.
lastly,
I want some
Kids
Cookie
Crunch
Crisp now.
instead of Captain Crunch. Now, if I saw an
That was
aisle
the
filled
best.
with those,
That and Reese's
I think I
Puffs.
was transported to another universe. In our 8th
Yeah.
spot today, we have the map. Now let's get to a serious one. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something pretty strange. It was a map from 1513 written on the skin of a gazelle. It was created by a well-known admiral of the Turkish Navy. Well, what's odd is that the map included Europe and North Africa, the coast of Brazil, several islands, and even Antarctica, which was not discovered until 300 years later. Not only that, but it was said that Antarctica was not covered in ice. The last time that occurred was more than 6,000 years ago. So this whole thing just doesn't make any sense. How did this man map a continent that's been covered by ice for the last 6,000 years? Maybe he's from a parallel universe, or maybe the map is. In our 7th spot today, we have the stop sign. Again, another item that just makes me uncomfortable. Someone decided to create a lowercase stop sign, and it looks like it's like, stop. No, just stop. Like it's too gentle. As a wise movie once said, no, stick to the stuff you know. It's better by far to keep things as they are. Don't mess with the flow. Stick to the status quo. If you know what movie that's from, I automatically love you. But maybe this person was driving around in another universe. Who knows? In our 6th spot today, we have the Oumuamua artifact.
I would check in your
hopefully I pronounced that right, because in
maybe
another video I didn't. So
got
now I'm
weird.
changing the pronunciation. Let me know if I get it
Audio
right.
and
Just
stuff.
be gentle, folks.
It
In
always gets
2017, this
I have to
object
go
was
into my
found
Pro Tools.
flying.
I have to go into my Pro Tools every once in a while and redirect my audio because it likes to just find another output that doesn't exist and try to send audio there, and then it tells me, hey, this output doesn't exist. I'm like, no shit. Thank you for telling me that. I know that. That's why I had you set up to this one. Does your headset have a mic on it? Because if it has a mic on it, that might be messing with your stuff. That's why I don't have a mic on this one. This is my mic. Get back down here. Ah, look on my finger. Ah, thank you. I've never thought of trying to use my Turtle Beaches. Heck, with these studio headphones, I don't even use them for gaming anymore. I put them on last night whenever I tried a little bit of Call of Duty and took them right back off because these sound so much better. I can hear footsteps on the other side of the map with these, whereas those pretty much can't hear them unless they're right on top of you. And even then, sometimes you don't hear them. Gunshots are muffled, whereas they're clear with these. I mean, these are just all around better to use.
By in our solar system. Now, it's quite weird. It looks like a space rock, but it's not a comet or asteroid. It's too small and oddly shaped to be an asteroid. This thing is long. In fact, this is now the most elongated known space object. Not only that, but astronomers were shocked by the condition of it. Astronomers thought that the first space rock to enter our solar system would be a ball of ice and rocks like a comet. But this isn't one. Now, not only is it not shaped like one, but there's usually a cloud of dust and gas surrounding comets, and this object just doesn't have that. But before scientists could study it too much, it left our solar system. All we know is that the strange object came from another solar system. Or maybe a different universe. And that's why it's so weird and unlike anything we've ever seen before. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Archless McDonald's. Imagine this, okay? You're hungry, you're driving down a road, madly looking for places to stop and eat, and that's when you see it. Off in the distance, you see 2 golden arches, and you know exactly what awaits you. The one and only McDonald's. Except whatever universe this is in, McDonald's only has 1 arch. Like, hello, it's not Nick
I could
Donald's,
only
it's
afford
Mick.
one.
So
Ooh, that
stop,
one's burning.
okay? Or maybe someone messed up with the designing this restaurant, I don't know. Also, since when does McDonald's sell just bags of ice? Like, look at the sign. Bag of ice, $1. I mean, it's a steal nonetheless, but still, that's odd on its own as well. In our 4th spot today, we have the Ulfbert sword. Now, this is something scientists like to call an out-of-place object. And that's because the sword dates back from around 800 to 1000 AD. which is shocking since they didn't have technology to make such swords back then. Swords like this were made 800 years later during the Industrial Revolution. Not only that, but its carbon content is 3 times higher than other swords of its time. It also suggested that in order to make this sword, iron ore had to have been heated to at least 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? Again, they didn't have that technology to do that back then. So many people are perplexed. Well, there are a bunch of theories. One is that it was dropped by a time traveler, or 2, it might have come from a parallel universe. One that is far more advanced than ours. But let me know your theory in the comments below. In our third spot today, we have Lost and Found.
Really smart.
A number of people on Reddit have shared stories in which they have lost something only for it to reappear in a place where it's impossible to.
My
So let me
10mm
explain.
needs to
So
do
one
that.
man said
I
that he
missed
was with his
socket.
cousin at Home Depot. Before they went in, the cousin grabbed his wallet, but he didn't have any pockets, so he asked the narrator if he could put his wallet inside his pocket so that he didn't have to carry it around. He agreed and he zipped it into his track pants. After shopping around at Home Depot for a bit, they went to check out, but his wallet wasn't in the track pants. So they retraced their steps thinking maybe it fell out, but nothing. So they decided just to go back to the car and return to the store later. When they got to the car, lo and behold, the wallet was on the dashboard. Which is wild because the cousin literally handed him the wallet and he zipped it into his pants. Now, one person believes that what happened was the universe glitched, and maybe in another reality, the man just left his wallet on the dashboard. Somehow, those universes merged, hence why the wallet was on the dash. Now, it's all confusing how this stuff works, but that's me explaining it the most basic way possible. In our second spot, we have the little dino-looking figures. In 1944, thousands of little dino-looking figures were dug up in Mexico. Only problem is that the pieces date back to...
Just so y'all know, I have one fly in here. That's him getting popped. Every time y'all hear that. This sucker does not kill anything, but he's determined to get to that light. It was even burning him earlier. I can still smell it. I don't even think he can fly anymore. But he's still down there walking around like, I'm gonna get to this light. I don't know what keeps smacking me, but I'm gonna get to it. No idea how that fly got in here either. I don't remember it coming in with me.
2500 BCE, a time when no dinosaurs were roaming around and people couldn't have possibly known about dinosaurs then. This is all according to scientists. So were there some other creatures that roamed the earth back then that we don't know of? Or is there a time traveling paleontologist out there? Imagine that, like Ross from Friends also being a time traveler. I love that. I don't know, or the object is from another universe. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the ring. Now this next individual has a similar story to the Home Depot boys. So for her, she was washing the dishes one day when she heard a clink in her sink. Her ring that she took off when she was doing the dishes had slipped and fell into the sink and down the drain. Now, it was just a cheap one, so she wasn't too concerned. It wasn't like her wedding ring. So she decided to just go on about her day. In the end, she forgot that the ring was even there. That was until a week later when she was putting on her shoes and felt something poking her toe. She emptied out her shoe and her ring clanked to the floor. So somehow, the ring went from being in her sink drain to in her shoe. Someone explain that to me. I don't know, maybe house elves are real.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Sparkle Muffin. These guys are colloquially named Sparkle Muffin, but they belong to an Australian jumping spider species of peacock spiders. They were first discovered quite recently in 2015 in the forest of Wandul National Park. They're around 10 millimeters big, but can jump lengths that are 50 times their own size, which is both impressive and horrifying if you're afraid of spiders like I am. The females in this species have a more plainly colored back, but the males are really where things get interesting. The male spiders have bright and beautiful colored backs, which make them look like a spider not from this planet. Spiders already look a little strange, so seeing one that is less creepy and more stunning is kind of confusing. These colors are of course to attract a mate and are flaunted during courtship. In our number 9 spot today we have the axolotl. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. Axolotls are also known as Mexican walking fish, and they also look like they came straight out of Pokemon. Despite being known as a walking fish, they're actually amphibians, but unlike most others, they reach adulthood without going through a metamorphosis. Rather than becoming land animals, they keep their gills and live in the water. The external gills that many salamanders have are usually lost in other species, but these guys keep theirs and they're lined with filaments, and this combination is what gives them such a unique look. Axolotls are often used in scientific research because they have the amazing ability to regenerate their own limbs. Unfortunately, axolotls are critically endangered in the wild. In 2010, they were near extinction due to water pollution, and the issue was only exacerbated by the induction of the invasive species tilapia and perch. Guess we're just ending that one off on a sad note. And they're dying. In our number 8 spot today, we have the naked mole rat. Watching Kim Possible was truly the only exposure I got to these guys when I was a kid, and boy do they look a lot freakier in real life. Naked mole rats are burrowing rodents that are native to East Africa. They're often called sand puppies, but that is one connection I just don't see. Despite them looking like actual aliens, one really cool thing about these guys is that they are one of only 2 known mammals that aren't humans that are eusocial, which is the highest classification of sociality. They have many physical characteristics that give them the ability to survive in the harsh underground conditions, such as their lack of pain sensitivity in their skin, as well as their low metabolic and respiratory rates. They're also super cool animals because of their long lifespans, which are longer than most other rodents, and their resistance to cancer, and their ability to survive on little to no oxygen for hours at a time. With all of these defense mechanisms built up, it seems like these guys really would be able to survive the jump from one universe to the other. In our number 7 spot today, we have the pangolin. Pangolins are commonly referred to as scaly anteaters, and it truly isn't hard to see why. Something unique about these guys is that they're the only known mammal with scales. Could it perhaps be because they came from a universe where all mammals have scales? No idea is too outlandish when we are talking about parallel universes. They're also nocturnal animals and tend to be quite solitary. There are different species of them, but unfortunately 8 of them are threatened in some way, with 3 of them being critically endangered due to poachers as well as deforestation in their natural habitats. They're hunted for both their meat and their scales that are used in some traditional medicines, and they're actually the most trafficked mammals in the world. Guess that was another sad one. And our number 6 spot today, we have alligator gar. The alligator gar is one creepy looking fish and is one of the largest freshwater fish in North America, as they can grow up to 8 feet. These fish have reptile-like snouts with rows of sharp teeth which resemble an alligator, which of course is how they got their name. These fish are often referred to as primitive fish or living fossils because they have retained so much from their previous early ancestors, such as their spiral valve intestine, as well as the fact that they're actually able to breathe both air and water, which is a super cool capability. These fish have been able to be traced back to the early Cretaceous period 100 million years ago, so they've been here long before any of us. These fish are stalking ambush predators, and due to their sharp teeth and just how large they are, I feel like these are a fish I personally will be staying far away from. In our number 5 spot today, we have vampire bats. Vampire bats are obviously bats, but unlike regular ones, the vampire variety have, as their name would suggest, evolved to feed on blood. Bats are already a pretty interesting animal in general, as they are nocturnal and use echolocation, but these guys really take it to a whole new level. Vampire bats use their senses to detect sleeping animals by their sound, and are even able to sense the best place on the animal for them to dig into. Considering there are only 3 kinds of vampire bats and the rest of the bat species feed on fruit and insects, these creatures are definitely a bit of an outlier. Maybe they come from a universe where vampires aren't just a thing in fiction. If the multiverse does exist, there has to be a universe where vampires are real. In our number 4 spot today, we have the pacu. Pacu is a name that refers to species of fish that belong to a family that are related to piranhas. There's one reason why these guys freak me out and make me feel like they're from another universe, and that is because they have teeth that literally look.
Last time I did TikTok reactions, I got a lot of very mean emails from YouTube about copyright and all of that crap, so I'm trying to stay away from TikTok reactions, at least for a little bit, until the warnings and crap fall off.
look like a human's teeth. Although they are related to piranhas, they most definitely do not share the same razor-sharp teeth or the same severe underbite. And, in a positive turn of events, despite their aggressive cousin and their creepy teeth, they mostly feed on plant material instead of flesh and scales. Imagine having a fish with teeth like a human bite into you. Maybe these fish come from a parallel universe where humans have piranha teeth and piranhas have human teeth. Okay, I might be getting a little carried away, but who knows what goes on in the multiverse? In our number 3 spot today, we have the blobfish. Okay, I'm sure we've all seen a picture of a blobfish at some point, considering it has been voted the world's ugliest animal, and honestly, I can see why. Here's the weird thing about these guys though. The picture I'm sure a lot of us have seen with these guys looking weird and, well, like blobs, isn't actually how they look underwater. These guys like to live somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 feet beneath the water, which is super deep in our oceans. Since they live so deep in our oceans, the pressure that they like to live in is immensely greater than our pressure up here. Like, without a super heavy-duty submarine, we couldn't even try to get that deep. So obviously, if we don't like being down there, then why would they ever want to be up here? So while in their more natural habitat they look like actual fish, when they get pulled up too quickly to a pressure they don't like, they turn into these weird blob-looking guys. I also forgot to mention that they usually don't survive that. I feel like we were too...
Let's see. I'm gonna save your channel. And I already have a playlist pretty much for tonight on this stuff. But next time I do reactions, I'll check you out. Alright, I got you. But yeah, during my stream, I got like, 16 or 17 emails from YouTube about copyright, and all this crap, and then I managed to fight all that off, and before I could even remove the video of the live stream, they sent me, I think, 20 with warnings and stuff on copyright, and so I'm trying to avoid TikToks till that crap falls off.
Too hard on them, considering it's not their fault that they look like that. But seriously, when they're all blobby, they don't look like fish at all, or really any creature that should live on this planet. In our number 2 spot today, we have the fossa. The fossa is a mammal that appears to look a lot like a cat, but it's actually not one at all. These animals are the top predator in Madagascar and hunt day or night, and are able to hunt on land or in trees. These animals have had quite a tumultuous time getting classified because they don't really fit into one box. They look a lot like cats, but they share a common characteristic with 2 other species, one of which is a mongoose. More recently, they have been put into basically a separate category. This category is for animals that are believed to have descended from mongoose-like ancestors in Madagascar about 20 million years ago. That is absolutely insane. These animals are also quite solitary, and one thing that is totally unique to them is how the females of this species, during adolescence, go through a masculine phase. They have actual physical features for a short while that are only seen on male fossas before they just return back to females. It certainly is a super interesting thing about them, but it's wild how no other animal goes through this same kind of thing. I wonder what could be the explanation behind that. In our number 1 spot today, we have the star-nosed mole. The star-nosed mole is on this list for no reason other than its star nose, because what the actual heck is that? Their noses are super creepy looking but incredibly powerful. They're actually used as a touch organ that contains more than 25,000 sensory receptors. Other kinds of animals have the same sort of organ that the star-nosed mole does, but none are nearly as specialized or as numerous. The mole uses its nose to navigate navigate around because of the fact that they are functionally blind. These animals have also been dubbed the fastest eating animal, as it takes them an average of 227 milliseconds to identify and consume individual food items, which is kind of like me with french fries. Apparently their brain can decide in 8 milliseconds if something is edible or not, which is the speed limit of neurons. If this wasn't already interesting enough, these animals can also smell underwater. That's a pretty cool power.
Smell underwater. So,
the first intermediate period of ancient Egypt spanned about 125 years, and it is often referred to as the Dark Ages. It was a time of chaos, confusion, and conflict, and we are going to talk about all of that as we cover the top 10 terrifying secrets from the Dark Age of ancient Egypt. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the downfall. To start this list off, let's talk about one of the things that happened just before the transition into the first intermediate period of ancient Egypt. It is important to note some of the causes of the fall of the Old Kingdom, which is what brought forth this period of chaos and turmoil. One reason that is often cited is the extremely long reign of Pepe II, who was the last pharaoh of the 6th dynasty. His reign began while he was a child, and it is believed that he lived to possibly into his 90s, which, like, first of all, that's incredible. Imagine that guy with modern medicine and plumbing. I'm just saying. But, of course, while that's wild to see that long of a reign, especially back in those times, his lengthy life proved to cause some issues for succession because the guy outlived all of his heirs. Because of this sort of disorganization, it led to the regime of the Old Kingdom kind of being disintegrated. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Nile. The overflowing of the Nile was a very important time for ancient Egyptians. It is a super important cycle for them that was actually celebrated annually for 2 weeks. In the intermediate period, it is.
Do you have a like actual gaming PC, or what are you using? Because you might need some upgrades to it. I'm about to have to do an upgrade to my RAM. I'm only running 8 gigabytes. I'm about to jump that up to 32. And then possibly 64 if 32 doesn't do it for me. I'm struggling to edit some music videos because my computer doesn't like them. Then after that, if that still don't work, then I'll be doing a GPU upgrade, which I don't want to do, but oh well. I already upgraded my drives. I got a SSD drive that actually plugs in to the motherboard, doesn't use the cables, and that sucker is fast. I also got, now including it, 6 terabytes of memory, so that helps a bunch too.
It is thought that the overflowing of the Nile, which really was necessary to their way of life, was lessened, or it may have potentially been non-existent for a period due to a drier climate, which is said to have potentially led ancient Egypt and its citizens into a terrible famine. The drier climate and the lack of the Nile inundation.
Yeah. Cheaper HP. It's probably not going to be able to handle a whole bunch. Not unless you do some major upgrades to it. Either a gaming PC or a MacBook Pro. Which, price-wise, I'm going to recommend the gaming PC. Because you can get the gaming PC, really nice one, and then slowly do upgrades to it to make it better than the MacBook. But if you've got $3,000 just drop on a MacBook, you can totally do that. But I like an actual tower that I can add more to, because I got 4 RAM slots, 1 plug-in SSD spot, and then 2 hard drive slots. And I've got a ton of space. I get that. Like I said, I just, whenever you can, get a tower gaming PC. That way you can slowly do upgrades to it, make it better. The MacBook Pro would be essential if you plan on traveling a bunch. Because then you can, it's a laptop. You can fold it up, take it with you, whatever. Whereas it's kind of hard to take a tower with you. Especially not break something in it. I'd be afraid to move that thing.
Would have resulted in lower crop yields, which would have a significant impact on those living in the area at the time. In our number 8 spot today, we have disorganization. Like I kind of mentioned in the first point, part of the reason this intermediate period is often referred to as the Dark Ages is due to the lack of organization within the kingdom. Manetho, who is a historian and priest from the Ptolemaic era, would describe 70 kings who ruled in 70 days. This is likely a bit sarcastic and an exaggeration, but it's meant to show how chaotic things were at the time in terms of leadership. This period of time can sometimes be overlooked in terms of leadership because there is...
I actually have my second computer right here because I was using it for a music video. Wow, you can't see that at all. Oh, and it's backwards. Oh, I got it upside down. The Samsung Chromebook. This thing, I got it for school whenever I was in college, and should have did a little bit more research on it. It's pretty worthless. I don't really know what you would use it for, to be honest, because it's super slow, sucks at everything it does, and doesn't do much. It's all around fail. But my first one was a little HP mini laptop, and that sucker, it was good till I started trying to hack, and then I crashed it. Oh man, yeah, that wouldn't have gone over well with me. I would have been finding somebody. There would have been no itches was taken. Because them suckers are nice.
Very little known about who was actually leading during this time. It is possible that the 7th dynasty may have been more of an oligarchy, which would have likely been composed of officials of the 6th dynasty. There unfortunately is very little in terms of both textual as well as architectural evidence that survived this period, so much of what really went on remains a secret. In our number 7 spot today, we have artifacts. During the time of the 7th and 8th dynasty, while it is true that we have little to go on, there have been a few interesting artifacts found that are believed to belong to this time period. There have been scarabs that have been found that are believed to have belonged to Neferker II of the 7th dynasty. There was also a green jasper cylinder that is believed to have come from the 8th dynasty. There was even a small pyramid that was constructed by King Ebi of the 8th dynasty that has been identified at Saqqara. While we have found these things, there are some rulers from this time whose positions remain unknown to this day. It is entirely possible that we may never know where some of these rulers lie. In our number 6 spot today, we have literature. While this entire period of time is incredibly interesting,
Oh yeah. It's not really for gaming, but you probably could have got that back if you found it. But yeah, the Mac's not really for gaming. It's more for, like what you're using it for, art, music, video editing. I mean, it's for actual work. If you want gaming, then you'd need an actual gaming PC because it has so much more space in it for so much more stuff to run smoother for gaming. Whereas the MacBook Pro is just a little sandwich. Everything's having to be crammed in it, so it can't get what a freaking tower 7 times bigger than it can get. So for gaming, that's why you want a gaming PC, but for actually working on stuff, MacBook Pro, for mobility, you can use a gaming PC for same stuff, but for mobility, MacBook Pro would be the thing.
One super cool thing is that the emergence of what is considered literature by our more modern standards seems to have occurred during this period of time. This led to the birth of new literary prowess in the Middle Kingdom, the age that came after this period. There is one specific piece that is very important historically, and that is the Ipuwer Papyrus. Although this piece of literature is not dated to this period, it is widely believed that it is likely referring to this intermediate period, and it records the decline in both international relations as well as just the general impoverishment that was seen in ancient Egypt at the time. In our number 5 spot today, we have nomarchs. Another problem that really contributed to the fall of the Old Kingdom and the introduction into this more difficult period of time was the rise in power of provincial nomarchs. A nomarch was a provincial governor in ancient Egypt. Since the country was divided into 42 different provinces, which were called nomes, there would be a government official that was responsible for each one. Nearing the beginning of the first intermediate period, the position of nomarch had become a hereditary one, which of course meant that one family was likely to hold the position and the power for quite some time. This of course meant that these families, with every year, would only get more powerful and more influential within their nome, which left them becoming more independent from their overall ruler. These nomarchs were beginning to have their own tombs built, and they began putting together their own armies, and of course, this went on to create conflict with those surrounding them. This not only created tensions, but it created warfare. In our number 4 spot today, we have division. Once things kind of settled from the chaos of the fall of the Old Kingdom and the bizarrities of the 7th and 8th dynasties, it was realized that Egypt was now kind of divided when it came to ruling, as there were two competing power bases. One of those bases was at Heracleopolis, which was located in Lower Egypt, and the other was at Thebes in Upper Egypt. Those in Lower Egypt had their rule for approximately 94 years, and their kings comprised the 9th and 10th dynasties, each with 19 rulers. The founder of the 9th dynasty, Wakhar-Kheti I, is often described as quite an evil and violent ruler who caused a lot of harm to those living in Egypt at the time. It is said that he was, quote, seized with madness, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it is likely hinting towards some sort of mental health issue. In the end, it is said that he met his demise at the hands of a crocodile, which, I mean, leaves me with a lot of questions. In our number 3 spot today, we have the buffer zone. Within the Heracleopolitan Kingdom, there was a powerful and wealthy province of Siut, or Asiut, which really rose to prominence during this otherwise difficult time. A new line of nomarchs began to rise out of this area, and they maintained quite a close relationship with the kings of Lower Egypt. We were able to discover this through what was inscribed on their tombs. These inscriptions provided a look into what the political situations were like during their reigns, and it describes this line of nomarchs as digging canals, reducing taxation, reaping rich harvests, raising cattle herds, and maintaining an army and fleet. Again, we are talking about a time that is referred to as the Dark Ages, so this sort of success was a big deal. Despite this thriving political situation, the Siut province acted as a sort of buffer zone between the dueling Upper and Lower Egypt, which means that it also bore a lot of the brunt of the attacks that were coming down to Lower Egypt from Thebes. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Upper Egypt rulers. We spoke briefly about those who were ruling Lower Egypt at the time, so what about Upper Egypt? Well, the Theban kings are said to have been descendants of Intef, who is the nomarch of Thebes, often referred to as the keeper of the door to the south. Intef is often credited with organizing Upper Egypt into the independent ruling body from the south that it went on to become, but despite this, it doesn't appear as though he ever tried to claim the title of king himself. Intef II began the attack of northern Egypt, and his successor Intef III completed that attack, which then left him to begin the move into Middle Egypt and the attack on Lower Egypt. The first 3 kings of the 11th dynasty, all named Intef, would also become the last 3 kings of the first intermediate period. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Middle Kingdom. With all of the political chaos that
Man,
was
this
going
one should've
on,
been
with the
labeled,
competition for power, this resulted in a lot of
educational, so
violence. Prior to the
entertainment.
military conflict, it is said that temples were pillaged, artwork was vandalized, and statues of different kings were destroyed. After the reign of the Intefs, they were succeeded by a line of kings who were called Mentuhotep. The second in this line is the ruler who would go on to eventually defeat the kings and rulers of Lower Egypt, those in the Heracleopolitan kingdom. This is important because it marked a new shift in ancient Egypt. This defeat marked the unification of the country, the continuation of the 11th dynasty, and it brought Egypt into the time of the Middle Kingdom. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozolowski, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and call it quits for the night. I'll catch y'all, heck, I don't know when I'll stream again. But, hopefully soon. But yeah, I'm gonna wait for myself to catch up here. So that way y'all get this. Now I'm out. Like she said. Bye! Now to wait for my bye. Any minute now. Any minute now. Any day now. I see I'm pointing at my